Okay, we're starting in three, two, one. Good morning or good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for tuning into the Butter Boys official podcast. Before we get into today's topic, I'd like to introduce the two people I have on the bench today. Tyler, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Tyler.
All right, Janice, please introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Janice.
All right, now that everyone knows who we are, let's. I'd like to start off today's conversation with a statistic. A study published by the National Academy of Sciences predicts that most of Florida will be underwater by 2025. This and many other climate change problems have made people worried about the future. So I ask you guys this since you know your parents had you because things seem to look okay for the foreseeable future. But with Earth on such a steady decline, do you guys plan on having kids in the future?
Personally
Hmm.
speaking, I do. I do.
Go
Yeah.
more into depth about that. Let's.
So, okay, my thinking behind it is like I'm kind of optimistic. I like to think that, people actually get their act together and
Mm-hmm.
steps will be taken to, prevent the entire United States from drowning.
So true.
Uh, but aside from that, I feel like I have a responsibility to, because I am the only male child in my family. So basically, my two sisters, say they were to get married, they would most likely take on their husband's name. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like the only way to kind of like continue the McDougal name is to have a kid myself.
So you're worried about keeping your legacy at stake.
Yeah, it's cheesy, but at the same time, it's like, oh, the name has come this far, 2022 years, and it's like, I'd feel bad if I ended that.
Yeah, I guess. Well, about what you said earlier, like having faith. Uh, Climate change has been on people's radar since the 50s. I mean, uh,
Hmm.
I can't remember exactly what it was, but at one point, like New York City was just flooded with shit, like before toilets were fully implemented, and they had
Mm.
remember they had that crew go. Did you guys ever learn about that in like
Yeah,
history?
yeah.
They had that crew go around and just clean it up because the cities were so bad. I mean, we've had kind of a bad attitude of oh the next generation will fix it for quite a while. So
Sure.
and I don't know how much technology plays into that. But Tyler, let's hear your thoughts on it.
Um, I'd say just going back to the having kids or not question, I'm gonna have to agree with Janice. I think I do want children in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And just some reasoning behind that, I guess. I guess the way I see it, it's kind of like it's just like an element of life, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, like you can go your whole life and not have kids, and that's it's completely fine. It's perfect personal preference and all that. But I don't know. I guess just part of me feels like why not? I don't know.
A lot of
Like
arguments I've seen doing the research is that it would almost to some people it feels like a punishment to have kids at this point because you're basically setting them off into uh, an environment that's only getting worse and worse. And that's a difficult thing
Sure.
for me to take in because I would love to have kids uh,
right.
someday, and I planned on it for quite a while. But it seems to me that things are only getting worse, and
I don't know.
because then, well, go ahead. Sorry.
Um, I don't just like whenever um kind of like what Janice said, just like being optimistic about it. Because like when I think of having kids, I don't automatically just think of like all the stuff that they'll have to deal with within like the coming world. Like of course I do, but it's not like my very first thought, like
Mm-hmm.
of course there's like a lot of problems and a lot of bad stuff, but I mean there's also a lot of good, and there's a lot of beauty in nature and just the world itself. And maybe I don't know, maybe like having kids will like maybe they will want to, pick up like conservation or just like they will like if it gets any worse than it is right now, then maybe just like the severity of things
Hmm.
will kind of just like reality check people, I guess you could say, and just like get everybody like working towards like a common goal.
That's a very positive outlook.
I also feel like it's kind of like, life moves on type thing. Like
Hmm.
each generation has had their own like respective struggles, and they've all kind of just made it through. So I feel like it's the likelihood of like humanity as a whole collapsing in like the next 100 years is, in my head at least, like close to zero.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it's like, yeah, it's probably not going to be like a cakewalk, but at the same time, you know,
Well,
kind of life.
that gets into a much broader idea of like there's that spectrum of uh why we haven't run into any other like alien species yet, and it's
Hmm.
because either one of two things happen, like uh species always die off at a certain point, in which it could be a point that we're getting close to. It's kind of like a line that you can't cross, or humans are the
Hmm.
only ones to ever cross that line.
Sure.
So it's interesting.
I mean, it's hard to tell like the indefinite future. Like, sure, you can look at statistics and you can kind of, get like a ballpark of where things are going to be in like the next 50 years
Mm.
and all that. But like at the same time, nothing is set in stone yet because we're still at a point where we can change things for the better or for the worse,
Mm.
essentially. I mean,
Uh,
like
Yeah, I don't I
there's
don't
still
think we've
stuff
hit
that
like a
can,
threshold of like a point of no return.
yeah, there's still things that can be done.
well, we ripped a hole in the ozone layer. I don't know if we can fabricate a solution for that.
I don't know.
Can't yet. Hmm?
I
Can't
don't
yet.
know.
Well,
That's a good point. I like that.
I mean, I guess Stephen Hawking was and Neil deGrasse Tyson were talking about splitting atoms.
Hmm.
Like, how do you figure out how to do that? And then the possibilities open up for doing a ton of other things. So
Right.
maybe it's not
I know
impossible.
I know you said earlier about like maybe technology will tie into something
Hmm.
related to this topic in the future. But just a thought, maybe I don't know how soon, but sometime in the future, maybe do you think they'll, I don't know, come up with a solution for repairing those kind of like natural, like the ozone layer? Like I don't know how they would do it, but do you think that's not too far of a stretch to think that? Or
Well, not to continue to play devil's advocate, but like I'm a big supporter of like electric cars, but the
hmm
issue with electric cars is the factories that make them produce a ton of like carbon and ruin the ozone layer and stuff like that. I think statistically, like the cars not emitting that stuff, and it makes it significantly less. It was something like you have to drive your Tesla 200,000 miles to be safer than driving a gas powered vehicle.
Right.
hmm
Because
Um,
like 90% of the time, also like when you're charging an electric car, I mean, there are some that are like solar powered, but 90% of the time, the place where you actually charge the car, it's powered by like a gasoline like run
yeah,
generator.
because you got to think of where the power comes from. And
I like
oh, go ahead.
okay. Um Also like I feel like we're still kind of early into the phase of like just getting into electric vehicles. Like I know they've been around for a little while now, but still in the big sense of things, I think we're still pretty well, I say we're fairly new into this, and I feel like there's definitely room for improvements and just getting better with all the like emissions and like being more efficient when it comes to producing those kind of gases. So,
Sure, sure. I feel like our future's best interest is not at heart. Not to put on the tinfoil hat or anything and bust out some conspiracy theories, but I feel as if politicians or like big rig oil men, they kind of have the mindset of like, well, let's just make as much money as we possibly can and then
Oh,
die,
for sure.
and
hmm
then because then it's not their issue.
Undoubtedly, yeah.
right,
So it feels like they're not doing us any favors.
right.
And it honestly would not like surprise me if there were steps taken to, like work backwards for, like financial gain.
Hmm.
I agree.
I mean, how much money can you really have before you're like, all right, should probably stop killing people?
I don't
Never.
know. They know something we don't.
I guess
It's
so.
like it's like you get to the point where it's like I don't know. Maybe you might as well. You know, you got all this money. It's maybe it gets to their heads or something like that. I don't know.
Hmm.
It's all the fun the lizard people cult.
Well, I'd like to share another statistic on the topic of having kids. All of this information is from EarthReminder.com. Uh, since it feels like the gap between rich and poor has never been greater, even in the United States, despite this being a wealthy country. Um,
hmm
and the statistic says that an estimated 150 million children are working as child laborers in some country to provide income for impoverished families. And because of that, those kids then lose opportunities to get educated. And another stat from that page says lack of education means lack of family planning, hence
More kids.
overpopulation
Right.
in certain areas. Now, I don't think the United States is quite there yet, but I feel like as poverty becomes a bigger issue, it might be the case now, and I just don't know about it, that there could be even child labor workers in the United States,
Mm.
and just overpopulation as a whole becomes an issue. So that brings me to my next question. Do you guys think that there should be a limit on how many kids you should have, either in the United States or worldwide?
That's good. Uh,
Mm.
I'd say okay. I say that there should be some criteria
Mm-hmm.
behind it, like depending on your family's income, like your net income.
Or you have
There
to
should
like
be
take a test to make sure you're not smoking crack.
yes. I forget where I heard that, but the idea behind like I liked the idea of like mandatory parenting classes
Mm-hmm.
when you get to like a certain age. That it's some people were like proposing like, oh, you need to have a license to have kids. That just seems like absolutely bizarre.
No, that's
I
a
don't
little.
support that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
But the idea of like having to take a mandatory like parenting class, that sounds smart to
To
me.
qualify for some degree,
Right.
because it's all about education, and I like what you
Mhm.
said about income earlier too, because it's not like, oh, well, poor people can't have kids. There's
Right.
tons and tons of evidence to show that one person uh, basic needs of living requirements is significantly less than a single parent or two parents and two kids. Um, so income does really play a major part in it, and I think that should be taken into account.
um. So like when you first told your question about whether we think there should be limits or not on how many children you can have, instantly I thought of learning about or like just remember learning about in China how they had like
Mhm.
that one child policy thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And now I really don't remember a whole lot, but
I knew it was
um
gonna come up, and I should have done more research on it beforehand, but I didn't.
I just I'm pretty sure it was they just had that because of like population size.
Mm-hmm.
Because China population wise is so much bigger than the United States.
Right.
And I don't know. I really don't know about China's financial situation and whatnot, but personally, I can't see the United States doing anything like that
Mm-hmm.
until we get to like that limit where we physically have too much people or too many people
Mm-hmm.
like in the country at one time where there's just I don't
I think that it's weird because I feel like China's a pretty wealthy country. I don't think it's
know.
crazy to think that. But from what I did quickly Google about the one China child policy, is that it after it ended because it was causing a lot of issues, and that like the Chinese people were revolting, that they didn't want other countries to think that they valued women less, and they were killing their babies
Hmm.
when they were girls,
Right.
or like, and there was a bunch of work problems with it too, and um, it just created a lot of issues, which is weird because their population is still so dense. There's
Hmm.
still a ton of people over there, and I feel like China has money. While this statistic from the same website says that it the United Nations predicted that 48 of the world's poorest countries will contribute over 1.7 billion people's worth of population growth by 2050,
Hmm.
which is
That's a lot.
that's too
It's a
many. That's too many
lot.
people, and you get to a point where like you have max capacity,
Mhm.
Hmm.
At the same
and
time, think about what they were doing, Industrial Revolution in Britain.
mm,
In order to, get them gains, they were just pumping out kids like crazy,
mm,
doing the whole like survival of the fittest thing. So that could also like slightly contribute to that.
it's messed up,
Hmm.
and it's peculiar too that when I'm curious to see what happens in the next 50 years or so, because there's been such a shift in not to get all like Joker 2019 on you guys, but there's been such a shift in our society
We live in a
late
society.
lately where because you have the generation of baby boomers, which was
Right.
a large uptick in having kids because of a
Hmm.
war. And at this stage in technological development, I don't think war is an option without global annihilation. So it's not really on the radar. Like global war, I mean. Obviously,
Right.
there's
Yeah.
still smaller wars going on, but eh,
I'd say war has advanced a little bit
yeah.
over all these years.
But we're I feel like that the baby boomer thing won't ever happen again, where guys will be coming home excited and making tons of babies because we're more educated now
So
too.
yeah, but so you said you don't think it'll happen again, but do you think that it could happen again under a different circumstance that's not war? Like, do you think there could be anything that would like trigger people to, you know, do something like similar to the whole baby boom effect?
I guess I mean COVID did. I don't know if it
It,
separated
it put a
families necessarily,
Yeah, it put a dent in the population, but I don't think it was that big of a dent.
but
That's
back
not me getting political. That's just me
dude.
like numbers wise, COVID
Hmm.
compared to like say a war.
Nah, you can have a political opinion, makes things more interesting.
Okay, well that's
Get political.
Yeah, get super political.
get political.
Um, I guess with the whole like society changing thing too, um, our values really change, and I think that with the whole like body positivity and like sex positivity that we're having in society, and like less stuff being censored on TV, and
Hmm.
I'm curious to see how, because that all plays a part of it.
Oh, for
Right.
sure.
I'm curious to see how that affects population, or more people like coming out as themselves, being gay or transgender or LGBTQ. Like, do those people plan on having kids, or you could adopt and well, that's a whole different issue.
Surrogate.
Surrogate,
I
yeah.
think I think I don't know. I just think it's I don't know if cool is the right word for it, but just how like the fact that like it's such like an ever-changing world that we live in. Like
Mhm.
it's hard to tell where things are going and how they will affect like us and like the earth in general.
Mhm.
And it's like you can't really look back on like older times because, it almost was like a different world.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
It's scary to think. The scariest thing to think about is we are doing something wrong right now that future generations will look at us and go, "Ew, I can't believe they did that."
I feel okay, but I feel like that's like a constant because
yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
but not even 100 years ago, we were like racism was normal. We were super racist and had
right.
like
Right.
slaves and shit. And we look at that now and we're like, "Ew, gross." But it wasn't that
Dang,
Hmm.
long ago.
that's a little whack.
Yeah.
But that's just like like
Can we just
as
can we just address that, Vinny? Did you say 100 years ago there were slaves?
I said not even.
Not even 100 years ago? I'm pretty. There weren't slaves in 1920s, were there? Am I stupid?
No,
no,
when was the Civil
no, but
War?
there's racism. There's still racism.
There was
It's
definitely
Well,
racism,
yeah, but
but
you
like,
can't own
it's
people
not
anymore.
slavery.
no.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, that was off topic. Continue.
Oh,
Don't ask me. I was sleeping in history class
the Civil. Okay, maybe I'm a little. The Civil War was 1861,
Yeah.
a little while ago.
but that didn't necessarily free slaves outright. I think it just
Oh
created
no.
a couple of states that were okay.
It was a gradual process.
Yeah. Hmm.
Hmm.
But then when you think about it, like you're saying, like in the future they're gonna be like you, how they're like, why did they do those things that are like
Hmm.
socially normal now? Like how far into the future you think that'll be? You think it'll be like soon, or you think it'll be later? I mean,
You know what I think? I think we're getting to a point where, um, and while it's developing right now to a point where you can think it's dumb, but I think with all of the like reducing uh like censorship on TV and in public and stuff, I don't think gender is going to be a thing in like 40 years maybe.
Like a thing at all.
Because
hmm,
you hear uh people talking now and they're like, "Oh, there's 50 plus genders, blah 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 blah." And all the power to them, but it's confusing to people like us, and we don't get it, and we don't think, a lot of people don't like believe in it, or
Right.
think about it in that way.
Outright deny it.
But I feel like once we get to a point where like, because think of it this way, in back in the olden days, if a woman lifted up her skirt and showed you like a leg, you'd be like, "Whoa, hot
Stone
mama."
her. Stone her right now.
Yeah. Oh no, 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 no. but but like in today's day and age, kids are have access to like chicks in micro bikinis, and they're like, "Oh, I'm not even into that." Blah blah blah
yeah.
blah.
You open up Instagram sometimes and it's just boobs.
It is.
Like,
So,
why?
but if you keep shoving that down our throats, our generation, the next generation's throats, we're not really gonna care.
Right.
Right.
Like
So
desensitization.
yeah, we'll become desensitized to it, and then eventually we'll all just be people instead of being gendered.
I don't I
It
don't
doesn't sound like that bad of a thing.
I don't like fully disagree with you, but like I think it will become like more socially acceptable overall. Like more and more people will, think of it as like okay, like I feel like less people will care than they do now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but I don't know, maybe it's just me, but like I just don't think that we'll ever stray away from gender. I don't know. It just
Because
seems like
I guess you
it seems
are.
like it seems like it's too built in to just completely like wipe it and just like erase it.
I guess maybe I'm talking about like a term for it. Sort
Oh,
of
okay.
like instead of having men's restroom and women's restrooms, it'll just be restroom or just locker room
I see. Okay.
or
Oh, okay.
like
I don't know.
Well, that I don't know about that because I feel like a need for privacy is just it's
People,
continued for so long. Like I don't think people are just gonna want to like
but
get rid of that.
everyone wants privacy equally. I mean, no one when you're in the
right.
boys' locker room, you don't want to get naked. So
Right. I
You
feel I
don't?
feel like I feel like now they do have those like gender neutral bathrooms,
Mhm.
but they have like, they have the men, the women, and then they have the gender neutral ones. And I think that's something that's not going to go away.
Mhm.
I feel like if everything just got combined into one, people would like it and people wouldn't. Because then
Yeah.
you're taking away their yeah, I don't know. I feel like the way that it is now and the way things are set up, I feel like we'll continue on a path similar to how things currently are.
Mhm.
Like you'll start to see more of that.
And as future generations go on, like I'd like to think we're pretty woke. You know,
Yeah?
because
Think-
Yeah.
I don't know anybody that's like inherently racist that's like my age or anyone
Mhm.
that uh, well,
Yeah.
I guess I know some people that get angry when you talk about transgender people. They have
Right.
something going on, but uh it just gets better every generation with like inclusion.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Not that I'm saying we should kill off the old people to stay woke, but
Sure. Yeah, because like I feel like it's a okay. I don't want to say it's like how do I put it? Like racism is kind of just gonna always be there because it's not it's just like you don't show up one day in the world and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna be racist. It's something that gets taught from like parent to child.
Yeah.
yeah. So we've got to stray away from it eventually.
Hmm.
It's such a primitive idea. We're so
I feel like
advanced now.
So advanced. We are the future.
I
Exactly.
feel like um I don't know if this is on like the same caliber as like, well, first let me say like when you just think about the past and how we have like evolved and all that as a country, and just as like a human race in general. Like some things were socially acceptable, like slavery and whatnot, that got, thrown out the window. That's not no slaves anymore. You can't do that. And although it's not completely gone, there's still racism and all that.
Hmm.
But the big problem is essentially gone. And then later down the line, it was like socially acceptable for women to not have rights and all that. But
Hmm.
then they eventually got the rights. So I'm thinking maybe like just like the transgender and like just the whole like gender thing and how it is now, maybe later down the line,
Hmm.
it will resolve in a way that is similar to how things have been resolved in the past, I guess.
I'd like to think that our generation is will be more open to change as we get older too, because
Hmm.
of like phones and constant new stimuli and stuff like that that maybe older
Hmm.
people didn't have growing up
Spread of knowledge is like way easier now.
and faster.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Well, I don't mean to cut you two gentlemen off, but it seems we're out of time. Uh, that was a fantastic episode. And to all the people watching, I hope you all tune in next week when we talk about Chainsaw Man.
Yeah.
We.
Oh,
No.
oh, my timer's going off. Okay,
Oh,
I'm ending the podcast now. Tune in next week when I insult Janice to his face.
no,
See ya.
no.